Yeah, welcome. So let's begin. It's just an hour session. Then let's see what we can learn within the 1 hour. So this webinar is brought to you by KTech IT. I am KTech IT. My name is Kayode Latif. So I'll be your host for this session. Now, the outline of this webinar is telling us what is a function, parameters and arguments, function statements, calling a function, and treat function examples. So what is a function? So in so okay, so what is a function in JavaScript? A function is the fundamental building block of a JavaScript application. Yes. So it's one of the most essential concepts you have to understand in programming language. When we talk about function, we think function as a piece of code, like a block of code that is performing a particular task. So if you look at these statements here, we pass data into a function and we process that data inside the function or do something with that data inside the function. And then we output, and then we output, and then we output or return that data. So a simple scenario of a function is a function that you can reuse every time in your code. Let me give you a simple explanation of a function. Let's say let's say what I used to tell my students is let's say we have a robot in your house. Robot is a program that you should robot should always the next tweet and get you probably a pack of milk every morning, maybe every 8 a.m. in the morning. So instead of you just telling the robot every time to do this, you can just function, create a function that's okay. Let me use a simple scenario. Let me share my let me try to share my whiteboard. Let's share. I'm coming. Hold on. I'm trying to share my whiteboard. So, for instance, look at this whiteboard. Let's say we have a let's say this is your house. For instance, this is your house, and the next street where they sell the milk shop, you have a robot in your house that you can program to always go and get milk for you every morning. So you can just create a code, a code that will tell the robot that okay, every morning 8 o'clock, just go towards this direction, this direction, this direction, this direction, every day. Can you tell the front to meet that? Okay. Let's mute our audio so that everybody can hear me clearly. So we can write a simple program that can always do this every morning. That's okay, every morning the robot should always go towards this direction, then to the left direction, right upward, then like this every day and come back again. Instead of doing this, you can write a program to do this. So the program will always repeat itself every morning, every 8 a.m. That's what function is doing. So a function is a code that you can write that can reuse every time in our code. So instead of you writing every morning, writing code on the robot to perform the operation, you can just create a function that okay, every 8 o'clock in the morning, go maybe 5 kilometers southeast and south, then you go 4 kilometers to the west, then 2 kilometers to the north, then 4 kilometers to the west. Every morning you should do this for you. So this code can be repeated every time, every time, every time. So that's what function is doing for you. So function is like you create a function, you create a piece of code. It's like you are adding many statements of code together then inside a piece of block of code. So that code which you want to be using it every time. That's what function is doing. So let's go back to the slide. Let's go back to the slide. So yeah, so let's continue with the slide. So that's what function is doing for us. So function is more like you are passing the data into a function and you process the data inside the function, then process the data in the function, then you have to do something like you can create a function to calculate the perimeter of a circle, you know. So everything right inside that code is what we call the function. So the function is holding several statements of code. So the most simple form of a function is a simple piece of a code that we can repeatedly use in our code. What does this mean? With a function, you don't have to write that code over and over again throughout your program. Instead, once you create a function, you can use it whenever you want. Now, let me show you a simple function. Let's create a simple function. So I'm going to share you my VS Code screen. Or let's do it like this. Are you on your VS Code also? If so, let us open our VS Code. Open your VS Code, open my VS Code too, then you code along with me. So I'm going to go to my desktop and create a new folder here. So if you don't know how to create a folder, just go to your desktop and create a new folder. So the folder, just name it JavaScript function. So I'm going to open this in my VS Code and I will show you my VS Code screen. So I'm going to open this VS Code. So this is my VS Code screen. So I'm going to create a new file here called function.js. So before you can output this code in browser, you need an HTML file. So you have to create HTML file, function.html. So I believe you all know how to link our JavaScript. So you create the title tag to the what? Function. Then, to link your JavaScript to your file, you go to the closing tag of the body tag. Then immediately before it, you just type the script source. Then the source is function. So let's do this. Now, after doing this, I want to show you how to create a function. And what's happening in my story here is that to create a function, use the function keyword. Use the function keyword. So the function keyword, function, then curly brackets, then this. So this function must have a name. So we give it a name. Let's say my name. Name of my function is my name. So inside the function, what do I want to do? I want to console.log. I want to console.log. Probably my name is Latif. So I believe you all know how to. This is a string, so it has to be enclosed in a double quotes. So when I run this in my live server, you are going to see Latif in the console. But before you can see that, you have to call it. So I will just put my name. So when you call this function, then it's going to work. So this is a simple way of declaring a function and calling a function. So you create a function by what? Like using the function keyword. Then the name of the function is my name. Then inside the block of code is the particular code you want to run. So we want to run console log Latif. So when you call the function, you get Latif printed to the console. That's just it. So I'll go back to my slide and show us something we can see. So this is just a simple way of creating a function. So what have we done here? We started with the function keyword. You can see. Then this is how we declare a function. Then we define a function name, which is my name. My name is a function name. So every function must have a name. We have anonymous function as well, but this function have a name. So we call the name my name. So this is the given name for the function, which is a function that will simply log something to the console. So the function I've created in my VS Code is just logging something to the console. So then we added parentheses. We use parentheses to add parameters, which we'll be exploring more later in this article here. Then we use curly braces to create a function body. So if you look at this, function, you can see we have the function name, my name, then the curly brackets. Okay, the curly brackets and this parenthesis is the place that is going to accept our parameters, which I'm going to show us later. So this is it. So let's go to our VS Code, and on my VS Code, this is what I've just done. I've created a function HTML file, then a function function.js. So I have to load the JavaScript file inside the HTML file so that I can easily have access to it in the browser. So this is what I've just done. So this is what I've just done. Now let's continue with our slide. So all the code within these curly brackets is called the function body. And it is this code that will be executed when we run this function. So to use this function that we have created, we simply write the function name followed by parentheses. That's what we call calling. So if I do not call the function, I won't have the results in the browser. So the process of doing this is called invoking, running, calling the function. So this is a simple way to create writing JavaScript function and the syntax of it. I'm going to open my browser and show you what I've just done now. So So I'm going to load this. I'm going to load this in my live server. So let's see what happened. So when I go live, I see an empty screen. So I will just go, the title is function. You can see the title here, function. So I will just right click and inspect. So when you inspect, you have your console here. So you can see Kayode Latif written boldly. So I have to zoom my screen so that I can see. Zoom. Okay, no. I have to zoom this. How do I zoom this? Okay. Well, okay. I hope you can all see my screen anyway. So I have my console. I have Kayode Latif in the console. So why this is happening is because I have called the function. I have called the function. So if I didn't call the function here, like I've done, I won't get Kayode Latif. So let me just comment this and let's see what happened in my console. Maybe it's being called. You can see nothing happened in my console because I haven't called the function. So I'm just going to write some few code in my HTML. I'm just going to write h1. The h1 is the function, JavaScript function. So I'm going to call the function back. So by calling this, the code inside this function name, this my name, will run in the browser console. So let's see. So you can see I have this running. Now let's continue with our slide. So when you create a function, you might be thinking that we need to write more code with function. Yes, that's true. Function is just used to break down. Function is used to break down a complex code into a simpler form. You can have, let's say you have a complex code now. You can break those code into functions, then start calling it inside each other. So you can say the beauty of it is that we can use this function again and again throughout our program when we need it. So we don't have to duplicate the code. So I'm going to show you an example of how to add 5 to a number. Let's say you want to add 5 to a number. Normally, I will show you how to do this without a function. So to do this without a function, we just create a variable number one. Then want to add 5 to a number. Remember, this function is to add 5 to a number. You don't know the number, so we just use our variable name. It's in a function. See what I've just done here. I've just declared variable number one. Then 12 plus 1, I got 7. You know, when I console the log. But with a function, you can write this in a very simpler way. Let me go back to my VS Code and show you something. So look at my VS Code here. Let's say I want to add 5, add 5 to a number. Normally, I can just say a variable, maybe my number equals to, let's say, I have 12, then plus 5. So this is the how to add 5 to a number, you know. Then just do console.log, then you have .log, then you have my number. When you do this, I'm going to get 17 in the console. Let's say you now come, let's say someone else wants to add 5 to a number. You have to come again and do variable my number 2 and say maybe my number is 30 plus 5. You know, you have to keep on doing this thing every time in your code. Now, to avoid this, you can just create a function. So that's where I'm going to. So let's do this using a function. So what I've done here is that I've created a function by using the function keyword. Then I add 5. I create the function name, add 5. Then I add a parameter there. Then I have this return. I will explain all this for you in detail shortly. So let me just go to my VS Code and do exact thing that I've just done here. So I'm just going to create a function. I will just create a function in my code. So instead of me writing variable my number every time, I will just create a function. So this function will have a name. So let's give it add 5. Now remember, when you are giving your function a name, you must give it a what? A meaningful name, like a relatable name to your code. Don't just say, okay, my name is Kyle Day. I'll say Kyle Day. You know, it doesn't make sense. I want to add 5 to a number, then you give it a name that is meaningful to your code. So add 5 is meaningful. Add 5 is meaningful, or you can say adding 5, you know, or you can say add 5, you know, you can also use number or add 5 to a number. You can see the way I'm typing it, camel casing. So a name that is descriptive, that people will know that this is what is happening in your code. So I'm just going to give it a simple name, add 5. So in the add 5, I want to return. I will explain what return is doing to us today, don't worry. So I want to return, so I'm just going to pass a parameter here. Let's say number. So I'm going to return number plus 5. That means any number I put here is parameter, any number. So I can decide to put 12, I can decide to put 30. So I'm going to call this. So for you to call this, you just say add 5. Then the number you want to put, that's the argument. So let's say I put 12 here. This is the arguments. 12 is the argument rather. So you are calling, you know, before here I was calling the name here, but I didn't put a parameter or an argument. But here now, I have a parameter. I'm going to explain parameter to us. So this is the argument now. So this thing, nothing will happen in the console because we are only returning, we are not doing any, we are not performing any operation like console or alert. So we are going to store, we can store this this function in a variable. Like let me say my first number equals to add 5. So for me to not see this in the console, I can now do console.log my first number. So by doing this, this is dynamically typed now. So I can input any number I like. I can change this 12 to 30 if I like, instead of me coming to write code every time again. So please let me just pause the recording. Hold on. Just 2 minutes. So as I was saying, we declare the function here. Called add 5. So we give it a number parameter. So this number can accept any value we like, any value. That's why I've just given the parameter of number. It can be any name, but give it a meaningful name to your code. So I'm now returning number plus 5. So any number I put here plus 5 will be returned with the functions. Then I now call the function here. I have to call the function. So after calling the function, then I store the function. as my first number. So let's say I want a second number. Just come here again and do my second number. Second number, I can just, you know, and do the console log.
Aren't you excited? The Champions League, Europa, FA Cup, every moment on the green. Every single moment.
So when I console this log in the console, let's see what will happen. I'm going to have two different answers. So this is just a simple way of this code here that I've done here. We can use a function, just a simple line of code. Then you just call it every time you need it. So I call it here for my first number. I call it here for my second number. So simple as that. So I'm just going back to my slide again. So that's what I've just done here. So without a function, you can do that, but function will make it easier. It will help you to avoid repeating yourself every time. Exactly. So that's just it. So I'm going to talk about parameters and return in this webinar. So now, so as you can see, yes, I like this. We have written more code in the second example, but it will be useful to write a cleaner code when we want to add 10 to or to more numbers. So you can see this one is function add 10. Okay, there's a mistake here. So this is function add 5, not 10. So you add 5 to this number every time, you can see. So I can console log anytime I need it. I can console log anytime I need it. Then I'll get my results. Instead of me doing variable first number equals to clinical plus 5, variable, you know, to save you from writing code several times. So the function has done the magic for us. So I hope you can now understand how we can write something once and use it again with functions. So function will help us to reduce and help us to recycle our code, which is something very awesome. So I'm going to move on to other parts of function, which is parameters and arguments, return statements, and calling a function. So let's look at parameters. Let's look at parameters and arguments. So parameters will convince you as a beginner. Parameter will convince you like, don't get parameter, you know, sorry, I'm speaking Yoruba. What is parameter? What is arguments? You see, before I go to the next slide, let me just show you, something here. Look at this function. This number you are seeing here is called parameter. So parameter is more like a variable. It's like a variable in function. It's like a placeholder. It's not like a variable. So it's holding data. Unlike when you create your variable here, when you create a variable in a JavaScript, you know, this variable is holding 12 plus 5, right? This variable is holding 12 plus 5. But in function too, this number here is like a variable. So it's called parameter in function. So it's holding a data that we don't know. Now, this data now is what you now have here. So when you call a function and when you see something inside the brackets, then this thing is called arguments. So argument is the value which is waiting for, which is the value from this parameter here. So I'll go back to my slide and explain in details to us. So yes, look at this image. We have a function add, then a comma b, then return a plus b, then add 2. So what's happening is that we have a function that has a function name, which is add. So this add has 2 parameters. A parameter can have more than one value. You can have plenty values, like more than 1, exactly, depending on the parameters you want to accept in your code. So this parameter is also accepting 2 values, a and b. So that a is holding a number, b is holding a number which we don't know. Is it clear? So this a here it's like a number that we don't know, but it's returning A plus B. So anytime we call for A and we call for B, so it's going to return 2 and 2. So, and they work in like in order. This A stands for 2, this B stands for 2. So this thing inside this function name they are calling is called arguments. This is called arguments. Then this inside the function name here in the function declaration is called parameter. I hope this is very explanatory. So this is parameter, this is argument. So argument is the value that you are waiting to get. That the argument is like, when you declare a variable, I say variable my number equals 5. That 5 is the value why my number is variable name. So here too, parameter here is the variable. Why this 2 and 2 is the value contained inside the variable. So this is the simplest way I think I can explain arguments and parameter to you. So arguments is inside, argument is sort of like the value stored inside this parameter. So it can be any value. So as you can see, we added the function parameter inside the parentheses. So anytime you want to use a parameter, we put the parameter inside parentheses. So this is the input or list of input values that need to be received to perform the function. So we have written 2 here. So this is A and B. So the argument waiting to accept the function is 2 and 2. So this A is stored, this 2 is stored inside A. There's this 2 is stored inside B. Whenever we want to call the code, so it's going to return 2 plus 2. We have 4. So you can think of it as an empty placeholder that needs to be replaced later on. So this A and B are empty placeholder. So we can replace it later in our code. So I want to now replace A and B with 2 and 2. That's why I have 2. So if you check my code, you can see that here I have called a function add 5 then with the number parameter. Now I'm not calling the number here. You can see this number here was replaced with that. Instead of me putting number here, I didn't put number here. What did I do? Then I put my own number, which is 30. So this 30 now has replaced this number here. So whenever I'm looking for 30, so 30 will be added here. So 30 plus 5, you have 35. So that's that. Now, arguments here now are actual values of function parameters for those input data. So in the example I showed you earlier in that picture, so 2 and 2 are, the actual data is 2 and 2, but the placeholder is A and B, like a variable. So 2 and 2 were replaced. A and B were replaced with 2 and 2. That's what argument is doing for us. So I hope that is clear. Simple. I will show you an example later. Very good example, like a good examples how we use these arguments and parameters in our code. So we go to return statements. Return statements also confuse people at times also. So here I'll make sure that you understand how to use return keyword. So with the return keyword, nothing will happen in your code. Before I explain this further, let me go back to my VS Code. In my VS Code, you can see that I have returned something here. When you return anything in your code, nothing will happen. Actually, I can just do console log. Instead of being returned, I can just do console.log. Console.log number plus 5. So this, whenever I call this code now, I don't need to do console log again. I have to just call. Okay, let me just rewrite it so that I'm not confused here. Let me rewrite it. So let's say I copy this. I have a function here, function that is a print name, So I'm just going to say name of a participant in this webinar. I can just say participant is the name of my parameter. Then I'm returning participant's name. Return participants. Return participants. So now I don't want to return. I want to console.log participants. So I'm going to call this function by just saying print name. Then what do you want to print? So the value here. So we want to print a string of quotes. So I'll just say, let's say in the webinar here, we have Kiki. Let me just put Kiki here. K-I-K-I-H. So Kiki will be displayed in the console. I'm going to check my console now, and let's see what happened. And you can see Kiki displayed in the browser. Kiki. What if I have returned? If I didn't console, if I have returned, let me return. So let me just do return. Return participants. So I'm going to comment this out. Then I now print name. Print name, and name of the argument is Kiki. Nothing will happen because I've only returned. I'm not consoling, I'm not outputting anything. I'm only returning. So let's check our console if we have a result. So you can see nothing was shown. We didn't see Kiki again. That means that when you use the return keyword, the answer is stored, the result is stored inside this function. So if you want to have access to this return keyword, then you can store this variable name, or you can just console. You can just do console.log this. Then you see your browser, you see that you are going to have Kiki. You can see Kiki now. So with the return statements, it only store a value inside this function. It doesn't output anything. It only store values. So let's go to our slide and understand it better. So some functions may not return a value, but most functions do. So we call this value the result of the function. So anything stored inside the function is called the value of the function. That is the result. So this value that is returned can be used anywhere later in the code. So let's look at an example. So I've just shown us now. So when you have a function add 5, then console.log number plus 10. So number here can be any value. So this number here is 2. So 2 plus 10, I got 12 because that is what was used to console the results. But if I didn't console, I want to return. We can see add 20 is the function name. Then the number is any number I put in the in my arguments. So I now said the number should be replaced with 2. So 2 plus 20, 22, but nothing will happen. I have to store this calling in a variable name so that I'm going to have access to it later. I can now do console.log first number. Then you have 22. I hope this return keyword is explanatory. So the return keyword we just so the return keyword. So the function I've just shown us now in this function here, in the first function here that I've just shown us, this first function, what's happening is that we didn't without anything. We just logged in the value of the function. That's why we got 12. But in the second function, we returned. You can see that we returned. So when you return a function, the value is stored inside the function. Then we can now use another variable to have access to it and call the function. So every time the function is called, the return value will be the result of the function. So the return keyword is like the answer you store inside this function. Not like a formula you have created. Okay, return number. Anytime I put number, anytime I put any number, it's going to add 20 to it. That's what the return is doing. So this function add 20 now has been stored. So anytime I run this code, the return statement has passed the results inside this function add 20. That's why we now want to have access to it. We declare a variable name, then pass it to it. Then you have you can now use this calling, this function name. You can use it anywhere in your code by just passing the variable here, first number. So console.log first number will return 22. So that's what happened there. So one thing you need to understand about function, about the return keyword is that whenever you use the return keyword, any code after it will not run. No code will run again. Let me show you an instance. Let's say you can see that I did return number plus 20 here. So if I go to my VS Code, so let's say I want to add more code here. Let's say I want to do alerts. Alerts. We are learning JavaScript function. So this code will not work. You can see I even have an error already because it is coming after the return keyword. However, if I've put this code here, you can see I have no error. This code will work fine. I'm going to have alerts in my code, in my browser. Let's check. So you can see alerts here. We are learning JavaScript function. So any code that you add after return statements will not be executed by the browser. This code will not work. Let's go and check. It will not work. Can you send anything like alerts? No. So it won't work. It won't work. That's what is happening. Whenever you write a code, return statement should be the last statement in your code. So that's about return. So no code will be executed after the return keyword. So for example, in the below code, I will show you a code below. Look at this code below here. You can see in the code below here, this code here will not run. I've just shown us in my VS Code now. It will not run at all. So if you want to run the console log, you have to place it before the return keyword. So that's this. So how do you call a function in JavaScript? So when you create a function in JavaScript and you want to use it, you have to call it. Calling means invoking. You have to invoke it, you have to call it. So how do you call a function? You write the function name followed by a parenthesis, which I've shown us in my code time to time. You can see this. You can see this code here. Let me see. Look at this function here, my name. So I call it here. So when you call a function, you use the function name followed by parenthesis. So that is that. So that is that. I've just told us that if you remember the first example, to log the name using the function we created, we use the function name followed by the parentheses below the function that we have written outside the function. So if you want to call a function, we use the function name followed by parentheses. So this is it here. This is it here. So that's that. So if you want to store the values that are returning from the functions and use them later on, you can always store it in another variable by creating another variable and adding the function name as the value of that variable. This is very simple. I've just done that also in my VS Code, where I told us that, they return a statement here, participants. So I now want to print this name here. I want to print this name here. So I can store this print name as a variable participants one. So I can store this, then I can add console.log participants one. You can see, if I check my console, I'm going to see Kiki displayed in the browser. Let's check it out. So you can see Kiki. We also have another participant here, which is this person, I didn't know your name. It's an Arabic name. But let's say my name. And a Zoom user also. Let me go to my code again. Let's say I want to print another name again. Okay. Yes, Pepe. Okay. We have Pepe on the Zoom chat. So let's say I want to call Pepe. I can just come here and say print name. So I have to call the function every time. Print name, then parentheses, then the name of the person I want to call. Remember, this participant is a parameter, which is waiting to accept an argument. So the argument I want to pass here is a string of name, which is a Pepe. So Pepe now is now stored as a return. Like this return now, you're having Pepe here, but you can't use it because you are not consoling. So if I want to output this result, I can store it with a variable name. I can store the variable name by saying variable participant 2. Participant 2. Then equals to print name there. I can add console.log participant 2 here. So if you check this out in my browser console, you are going to see Pepe also. You can see Pepe. So this is how you can use a function in your code. So you can see I have called the function name and I store it here. Let's say I want to use it somewhere else, maybe in line 5,000 of my code. I can also just use this variable here. This function has been stored as a participant 2. Participant 1 is Kiki, and so on like that. It's very easier for us instead of us repeating our code every time. So this function here is just telling us that what it should print. This function is telling us to print participants name. So the console. Simple as that. So we have another participant again who has just joined, Adelakin. So Adelakin too, you can just use Adelakin as its own name by saying print name again. I want to print name, then Adelakin. So to use this Adelakin now, I can store it in a variable so that I can use it anytime in my code. Variable participant 3 equals to this. And I can console log. I can console log participant 3. So when you do this, you get Adelakin in the console. You can see I did lacking in the console. So this is a simple way of calling a function and using it later. So let's continue. So I've just done that here now. So you have a function add 5. So return number plus 5. So this number is the parameter. So we now store the first number as we now store the calling. Like we want to call add 5 now. We now store it as first number. So I can use this first number anywhere in my code. So in the above example, we have created a variable called first number. You can see variable first number. Then we have given the function name add. Is it add 10 or add 5? Yeah, add 5. I wrote add 10. So as the value to that variable. Now you can use this variable to call the function whenever you want. So I can call it anytime I like. So I hope you have learned the basic parts of a function. So that is how to have a basic idea of how function work in JavaScript. So I will give us an example of function